All right, folks, we are live. Thank you for coming and joining us on the show tonight. I have an excellent guest, as it is now 9 p.m. Central, live on the show. If you're watching the replay, then it's the time in your location. Joining me today is a very talented photographer with a very specific focus. It's Mr. P. Mr. P, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So your specialty is abandoned places, urban exploration, these kind of buildings and locations that you find that have maybe been left to nature after a certain period of time, and you find the beauty in these places and you photograph them. So what I wanted to first is, what came first, chicken or egg? Were you a photographer and you discovered your love for finding these abandoned places, or were you drawn to these abandoned places and said, I need to take up photography to document and capture these things that I'm seeing that are particularly beautiful to me?
It was always about the exploration first. I didn't know anything about photography until about 2018. It was basically, I want to see what's behind the scenes, go check things out, and then decided to start taking pictures, and progressed through better and better cameras, and that kind of thing. So got gifted a point and click camera one Christmas, and started off with that, and got a big boy camera in 2018. So
nice. Okay, so were you exploring on foot without documentation, without documenting things before then? Were you just going into these places and just for the viewers, so we know, if we're vague at any instance, we're trying to obfuscate a little bit the specific locations where Mr. P has been, has gone, will go, for obvious reasons, which I hope will be obvious. But were you doing these kind of things without a camera before, just exploring the places just to explore?
Yeah, we were doing that as far back as I want to say, at least, to do abandoned exploration, probably as far back as 2000 or so, 99, 2000. So, I was married at the time, and we would go out and do these things. And I think back then we had, basically those throwaway disc cameras that had the film in it. I have some old pictures of that, but that was it, really. That was all. We took it just we didn't know what we were doing, and just to say, hey, we were here, but it was more about the exploring and just to be there, go see it.
And at which point did you decide, what made it click in your head, I should be photographing these things rather than just exploring? Was there a specific moment?
To try to capture what was there and show people exactly what it was I was seeing. Because not everybody gets to see this stuff. They don't go to show the beauty in it. There's a beauty in the abandoned, and not everybody always gets to see that. So it just kind of was part of what I wanted to do to show that.
Right. What were some of the first? Well, okay. Again, we got to be careful. In whatever detail you can get into, what were some of the first places or first types of places maybe that you were exploring before you decided to begin photographing? What were the places that drew you in? Was it just areas near where you live that?
Mostly local Ohio stuff. I mean, that's where I'm from, Cleveland, Ohio. So one of the places that we had was an abandoned amusement park.
Oh, wow.
Totally overgrown. Not much left there. There was a Ferris wheel and some things, but all completely covered in vines, and called Chippewa Lake Park, about a half hour, 45 minutes south of Cleveland. And that was one of the first places I ever went. And it's pretty much all gone now, but back in 2000, we went there, and that was fascinating. It was a fascinating place. It's been closed for 30 years at that point, totally overgrown.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we have a place that's pretty well known. It's still there, believe it or not. It's called the Lima Tuberculosis Hospital. Very old hospital. It's probably getting torn down soon. That was another place that we went back in 2000 that just blew my mind. Yeah.
Wow. Do you prefer a certain type of structure more than another? Are you drawn to these kind of older buildings? And is it normally the older buildings, I would imagine, that are abandoned, right? Or have you been into places like, shopping malls and places like that we know are closing rapidly across the country?
Yeah, we've done a couple shopping malls. St. Louis, there's one in Columbus, Ohio, we just did not long ago. Some of them have been torn down since then. I'm a fan of industrials. I love industrial buildings, old industrial factories.
Right.
We have a ton of those up in here in the Rust Belt, up in Cleveland and Detroit and Buffalo, New York, and there's a ton of old industrial stuff.
And what are you looking for when you first enter these places? With the photographer's eye, are you looking for the juxtaposition of nature having encroached on these industrial spaces? Are you just looking for beauty? Are you looking for particularly arresting or interesting graffiti pieces? Is it all the above?
It's all of it, really. I mean, every building has something different going on in it. combinations of all that stuff. You're looking for rust, you're looking for old machinery, you're looking for especially in a factory, you're looking for all these different things, the colors and the textures and all of that, the architecture. It just depends on the building. Every building has its own personality. Every place has its own personality. So you're just looking at different things. Just depends on what you walk into. Every place has a beauty. You just kind of have to stand there for a while and take a look around and see what you find.
Yeah, I find it a lot of your shots, people will, and all your websites will be linked in the description, but people really need to go and look at how you find the beauty in these places that maybe people would not immediately think of beauty when they think of an abandoned factory or an abandoned hospital. But your photographs really are evocative of how we can find that there. And are you researching places before you go in? Are you just stumbling across these places as you travel? What's the process like for finding an abandoned or urban place to go and photograph?
It's a little bit of all that. A lot of it is research. You do tend to network with different people as you get further into this. You meet people and you network and you trade locations, and a lot of it's just research on the internet, Google Maps, that kind of thing. You follow rivers, you follow train tracks. That's usually what leads you to abandoned things. I mean, especially industrial stuff. Sometimes you just sit on there, late at night, and you just look around and you find all kinds of stuff that you didn't know was there just by looking around.
Are you going on your own normally, or do you have a crew that goes with you?
I usually go with somebody. It's not a good idea to go by yourself. It's usually go with a crew of 2 or 3.
Okay.
2 to 4 is probably about as far as I go, just because then it becomes a crowd. But it's always good to have somebody there because you don't know, if something goes wrong, there's somebody there to back you up, or call somebody to come help, or whatever the case may be. You don't want to go by yourself.
Right. What is the main danger when you're doing these things? Is it the homeless? Is it structural integrity of certain locations? What do you worry about the most, if anything, when entering into these abandoned places?
I would say structural integrity. Yeah,
Okay.
it's just depending on, because it could look very sturdy but be dry rot. You could have dry rot in the wood. You could have too much rust underneath the metal, and concrete's all shredded up. And we've had that happen where we've had some close calls. Which makes you reevaluate what you're doing when you go into the next place, just to kind of what to look for. I've had a couple close calls where I almost wound up in a basement.
Wow. What kind of equipment or tools other than your camera are you bringing with you? Do you have like climbing gear? Do you have gloves and rope and anything like that, or are you just getting where you can?
Mostly, I mean, we've got our camera bags, we've got our lenses, our camera, that kind of stuff. We always have a good flashlight. You gotta have a good flashlight. First aid kit is a must, just in case something happens. Sometimes we take a ladder. Just depends on where we're at. I have a collapsible ladder, but most of the time you just go in with those things and see what's there. And if you can't get to a certain place from where you're standing, you sometimes come back better prepared, but just depends.
Have you had any close calls, either falls, or have you ever been in somewhere where someone was there that you did not expect to be there?
Oh, all the time. You never know who you're going to meet in some of those buildings. Sometimes you mentioned the homeless. They're usually pretty harmless. You usually don't have any problems with them. In fact, we've had conversations with homeless, and they're very cool. A lot of times we'll bring canned food, especially in the wintertime, as a peace offering, and they'll show us around. They'll tell us, go over there and look at that, or go check that out. Most of them are pretty cool. I mean, we've never had any problem with homeless. Sometimes we run into drug addicts, though, and that can be a problem. We've had people tripped out on crack, meth. We've had to make some retreats before. I was down in New Orleans with a buddy. We did an abandoned hospital down there, and it was just filled with people just creeping around that were on drugs, and it was kind of terrifying.
Sure, I would imagine so. What's the scariest human interaction that you've have you been threatened by any of these people?
We've been chased. We've been chased before. We've been stalked in the building. Yeah. In that same location, we were hiding in a closet. Basically, this guy was following us around, and he was looking for us, and we were waiting for him to move on past us in the hallway. And he was looking at us. He was like stopping and listening for us. And we had to wait a little while. And it was just the two of us, in a place we'd never been before, in a city we'd never been in before. New Orleans is a whole different animal compared to up here.
Right. Yeah. Has anyone come at you with any kind of weaponry, or
not yet?
Not yet. Yeah.
Knock on wood. Knock on wood. No, nobody's.
Yeah.
Yet.
Let's hope that.
We've been shouted at. What's that?
You said you have
No,
been
no,
shot
no,
at?
no, no, no,
Or you
no, not
haven't?
yet. Hopefully not. With a BB gun once, but that was out. That was out in the rural in the sticks somewhere. Someone shot at us with a BB gun, but they
Oh
weren't
boy.
shooting to hit us. They were just shooting to scare us off.
Okay. Now, do you bring anything with you, any kind of bat
No,
or
not a good
no?
idea because
Okay.
if the police do show up and they find you armed,
Yeah.
it's not a good case.
Bad enough you're there, some
Right.
instances, and then armed
Right.
also. Yeah. Have
Mhm.
you had run-ins with the police for being in places
Um,
where you're not
Here
supposed to
or
be?
there, yeah. But every time we've ever run into them, if as long as you're respectful, usually if you're respectful and you come out and yes sir, no sir, they're usually 9 times out of 10 they're going to let you go,
Okay.
unless you're you know up to no good. And they can tell you're up to no good, but we don't we don't do anything in buildings that would cause them to believe that. So
Right.
we've gotten off pretty easy most of the time. If once you calm them down and they realize you're not there to cause trouble, they'll talk to you about it and they'll tell you other locations. We've had cops talk to us about other places to go in town. They're like, yeah, go check this place out. So it just
Oh, that's very
depends
cool.
on how you behave around them. You
Very
know,
cool. Have
yeah.
you come across contraband, illicit substances, weapons, anything that you needed to report to the police? Say, hey, I'm in this place. Maybe I'm not supposed to be here, but I found such and such, and I need to notify you. Has anything like that happened?
Oddly, no, not yet.
Really?
You
Okay.
think?
Oh,
Well, I mean, I've been a ton of places, and we've never run
yeah.
into any kind of drug. I mean, I know people that have, but we've never run into any kind of drug paraphernalia or anything like that. I mean, we've found shells and needles and stuff like that, but
Right.
nothing that was active. Nothing that was
Okay.
recent.
Right. Now,
Luckily,
are you a believer in the paranormal? And if so, have you experienced anything of that nature in your explorations?
I mean, I believe that something's going on. I've never had anything where I've seen anything. I've had plenty of
Uh,
experiences where you just have weird vibes, or you'll hear things that you're not sure. Is that the building settling? Is it somebody there? I just did a podcast episode on that last week for Halloween. Some of the experiences I had on that, but on my show. But little things here and there. I've never seen anything.
okay.
I've felt somebody tap my back once. It wasn't even an
Really?
abandoned building; it was just a location. I felt somebody tap my back once when I was shooting,
Ooh.
but there was nobody there. So who knows?
Hmm. Have
You know,
you Do you ever do audio or video recording? And have you ever captured any unexplainable sounds on those? If so?
I started doing that at the very beginning, doing video, but I stuck to mostly photography. Now we did catch somebody in a mall we didn't see there, which kind of blew our mind. We were in a mall in Columbus. We caught somebody at the far end. We didn't even know was there. We caught this kid looked on his camera at the far end of the mall. We didn't see him, which kind
Wow.
of blew my mind. When I was editing my photos, I'm like, who's that guy? That's not the guy I was there with. So we've seen that, but I don't think he was paranormal.
No, just a
Would have
flesh
been a cool
and blood.
story if he was, but he wasn't. He was just some
Yeah,
kid with a
it's a
cell
cool
phone.
story either way. Now, there's
Yeah.
I've told the story on the show before, but I used to do a little bit of this, what you do, and it was so long ago that I had disposable cameras, I had thrift store film cameras, a Polaroid, and someplace that, again, I don't know how specific we want to get. Someplace that we've both been in our exploratory adventures. There's an underground. I don't know if it's a basement. I don't know if it's a tunnel. I don't remember. You may recall it better than I do. But there's an underground portion, and I remember I had explored most of the building, whatever I could get to. Broken down elevator and tables and white kind of hospital style beds is what I recall being in there. And then I after doing that, I went to head to this underground section. This was the middle of the summer. I
Yeah.
got near the entrance to go down, and it's just freezing cold,
Mm-hmm.
freezing cold,
Mm-hmm.
and not in the sense of like, well, it's a lower level, and naturally it's colder down. No, this was ice.
Yeah.
And I said, nope. And I turned
Yeah.
around and I left. Is that the kind of thing that have you experienced
I
that
have
kind of?
had that happen. Yeah, where it's just a balmy, thick summer day. Where we did. I'll give you an example. We were at a place. It's gone now. They tore it down. It was an old psychiatric hospital west of Detroit. It was called Northville, and we were there in one of the buildings. This was just falling apart dormitory. Just dormitory falling apart, and it was hot as all get out. We're walking around, and all of a sudden, just cold, and it was a hallway. There shouldn't have been any cold air there whatsoever. And just
No,
this cold patch. I'm like, yeah, I'm not messing with that.
no,
We
yeah,
knew what we kind of both had that feeling. We're like, let's move on from this
right,
building. Yeah.
yeah. That's exactly what I did. I just said, Not worth it. Don't know what it is. Even if I'm imagining it, I'm not going to chance it. I'm getting out of here. I've
Yeah.
gotten some cool pictures already. It wasn't worth it. Um, okay. Since we started talking about paranormal, what about things like cryptids? Is this something you believe in? Have you seen anything out
Oh,
there?
one
Bigfoot?
of my favorite things of all time is the Mothman legend. I don't know if you're familiar with Mothman up
Oh,
here in
sure.
West
Yeah,
Virginia. Yeah,
of
oh,
course.
big time. I tell my kids that at school every year since I teach. I tell that story every year, right around this time of year. It's like a special thing. I love Mothman. I'm all about the Mothman,
Yeah.
so I'm all about that. I don't doubt there's something out there or has been at some point. I don't know what it is, but I've never seen anything. But I've been to that area, West Virginia,
Hmm.
um, and then been to the locations where that was at. But yeah, I don't doubt that there was something there.
Have you ever
Somebody saw
thought about?
something.
Have you ever thought about a side venture of cryptid hunting with your photography rather than just abandoned
I would
places?
go with somebody. If I knew someone who was a Bigfoot hunter, I'd go out with them just to see. Out at night, I would go. They haven't met anybody yet that does it, but I'm sure they're out there. I would love to do
Yeah.
that. So if somebody's out there listening that wants to do it, I'd be happy to do it.
I'm trying to
Ghost
find
hunting.
somebody to come on here who's a believer in Bigfoot and persuade me because I'm very much skeptical. I'm open to the idea of the Bigfoot. Mothman, I think there's more evidence. I feel like I'm convinced that there's something happened.
Yeah, there
With
was something going on there, and
yeah,
there's all kinds of theories. I could talk all night about that, but I mean, it's everybody was seeing something. It was like the small little town was seeing this thing for a whole
yeah.
year. They were
Fasc-
seeing something. It wasn't just one person or two people trying to be famous. It was, I mean, whole town.
Have you
So
been in any extremely places that people would know, like the mansion of some famous aristocrat, or some kind of hotel that people would know the name of that you could mention, or do you try to find just kind of out of the way places where people wouldn't necessarily recognize it, but you know that there's something in there that you're going to be able to find that will make a beautiful shot.
I mean, most of the places we go are long forgotten. But I'll give you one we did this summer. We did the Hotel Niagara in Niagara Falls, New York,
Oh, okay.
which fancy hotel. We found our way in there, and this was like we're talking like 1920s ornate Art Deco. This is where Marilyn Monroe stayed back in the day. I mean, it was beautiful, and we got in there at golden hour, which is the end of the day when the sun's coming through. It just makes everything glow that nice golden orange color. It was beautiful. I mean, that place was amazing. I don't know how they haven't recovered that place or redone it yet, but that's I guess probably one of the more famous places I've been that people would know. Um, I don't know how they haven't restored that place. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's I notice things like that all the time. There are whole sections and whole towns.
Yeah,
I like my wife and I used to take a lot of road trips across the country and just come through towns. So it wouldn't take much to just revitalize this. It would be a beautiful village or town or
yeah.
building, and a lot of times it doesn't happen. Have there been instances where you have been to these really run down, abandoned places and come to find out that later someone did go in and revitalize and it's up and running again? Has that happened?
Oh yeah, it's happening in Detroit, all over the place in Detroit. Detroit was a mess. Even like 5 years ago when I first started going there, and that place is going nuts with revitalization. There's a lot of buildings that either they've torn them down and rebuilt something, or they've taken the building and done something with it. So there's lots of that going on. Yeah, slowly but surely.
That's great to hear. Very good.
The recession
Um,
killed the recession killed a bunch of cities around here. It was tough. I mean, here in
yeah,
Cleveland, it was the same way, but they're slowly, it's coming back, and they're starting to
that's
use a
good.
lot of the old buildings.
When
So
you first started doing this, when before you started photographing these places, when you were just exploring, were you telling people that you were doing this? Were you just sneaking away? And when you did start to tell people, what was the reaction you got? Did people think you were crazy? Did they say, "I want to come along"? Did they say, "Why are you doing this"?
Little bit of all that. It's still like that. It just depends on
Yeah,
most of the people that know me. My friends are a lot of my friends are the ones that go with me, so they know. But like colleagues and stuff, they don't get like why would you do that? It's dirty. It's dangerous. I'm like because it's interesting, because it's cool. It's neat. It's something to see. Um, every year they talk about, well, we went to Disney World. We went to here, we went to there. Where did you go? I was in Detroit. You know, I get funny looks, but it's fun. My family kind of gets it, but not really. I mean, they like the
right.
pictures, but they don't ask too many questions. They're just like, don't get killed, don't die.
Yeah. Who was the
So
first person that you showed your photographs to initially, and what did they say?
It was
You
on.
remember?
It was actually just on Facebook. It was just to families, and they were like,
Oh,
"Oh,"
okay.
and they weren't. It wasn't even. It was just like abandoned gas station. Abandoned gas station. Abandoned little things. It wasn't. It didn't start off as big. It started off as little things that I'd see on the side of the road. Um, that's where it started, and it kind of went from there. I actually had a friend of mine. I met a friend. One of the first guys I met that also did this. He's one of the first ones to take me into an industrial here in Cleveland. And after that, it was like there's no going back. It was like the Wizard of Oz, black and white, and then all of a sudden it's in color, and there's no going back.
Yeah.
Once you got your first taste of that, you're like, I gotta have more.
Is it a feeling of adrenaline? You get a rush still going into these places, or is it
You
old
do.
hat? You still do?
It just depends on where you're at. There are some places that you've been a million times, you just feel comfortable there, and you know that there's nothing that's going to happen to you. We've got a couple places here in Cleveland that you just walk in off the street, and it's like coming home. Like every inch of the place. You feel comfortable taking people there. And then there's places you've never been, and that's where the adrenaline really kicks in. Um, we've been in power plants, we've been in all kinds of places.
Wow.
That's where it really kicks in. Yeah.
Do you revisit the same places frequently, and do you notice change in a lot of these places, or being that they're abandoned, they kind of just stay the same?
No, they change constantly.
Really?
Even abandoned factories you wouldn't think anything would happen to. Windows get broken out. Kids spray paint stuff. Things get broken. They're constantly changing. The weather. I mean, warps floorboards. I mean, things happen quickly. Like if a school gets abandoned, if it's recently abandoned, it'll within a year it's a completely different place.
What about wildlife? Have you come across much wildlife in any of these places where nature is really overtaken? I mean, raccoons or I don't know.
There are a couple places. For instance, Gary, Indiana, very abandoned city. Used to be this mega powerhouse industrial place, and 70s and 80s and into the 90s it just collapsed, and a lot of these factories just got abandoned, and you've got whole ecosystems growing inside some of these factories with ponds and there's wildlife living in there. Like you said, raccoons.
Yeah.
We've seen deer in some of these factories. I mean, it's crazy how much Mother Nature takes all that back after a while.
Yeah. What is your feeling about the graffiti in a lot of these places? Would you prefer that, at least upon your initial visit, that they were kind of pristine in their abandonment, that humanity had not ventured in there and marked it up? Or do you find the graffiti to be a part of the art, part of the beauty of the photographs that you take?
Yeah, I think it's part of the beauty of it. Again, it depends on who it is that's doing the graffiti.
Right.
If it's kids drawing, genitalia all over the place, that's one thing. That's you don't want to see that. But there's some beautiful stuff out there that should be in a museum. Like you'll find murals that are just out of this world. They're just beyond anything you've seen. It's, we were in Chicago recently, and there's some stuff we came upon that was like, why is this not in a museum? It was just amazing artwork, talent, real talent. So it just depends on what you're seeing. But I think it adds a little bit something to, especially if it's someplace that's been abandoned for a while. It adds something to the shot. If it's something that has just been abandoned, maybe it's nice to get a little bit less of that. But it's going to happen whether you want it to or not. I mean, eventually it's going to happen.
We have a question from the chat. So the question is, how do you avoid? This is a good question. How do you avoid the police being called or interference from neighbors? Scary run-ins with addicts. So yeah, I guess if you could speak to any or all that, you did address a little bit that you have been chased, that sometimes the addicts are a little scary to deal with. But yeah, what about you just trying to be as quiet as possible? Are you going in largely during the day so that people aren't seeing flashlights shining around and calling the cops? Or do you think about that before you're going in? Like, how do I avoid this from happening? Or is it not a consideration?
Well, let me hit the police first. First of all, we go usually depending on the place, the location. There are certain places where we go. Like if we know it's going to be risky, we go early in the morning before the sun even comes up. We've a lot of times we've already reconned the place. We've driven past it. We've gotten some ideas on what's around there. Where to park. We never park near the building. We always park away from it, a side street somewhere. Another business somewhere where you're not going to attract attention. If you park in front of the place, that's an instant giveaway. They're going to know exactly what you're doing. So if you're parked elsewhere, that's a lot less chance that the police driving by would even notice, or that someone would see your car there and call. Neighbors are a little bit different. Again, if you're early, like on a Sunday morning early, especially if you're like in Detroit or someplace like that, everybody's asleep. Nobody's out at 6, 7 in the morning. So you can kind of, there's a lot better chance of you getting in without any problems that way. Leaving is not a big deal because all you got to do is hop out, and once you're out, and they can't really do anything to you. But
Right.
as far as attics and stuff, I mean, that's just a risk. I mean, you don't know what you're going to run into. You just got to be ready you got to be on your toes and be ready. You just got to be aware of your surroundings. Listen, don't make too much noise. There's a lot of people who go into these places and make a huge ruckus, and they miss the stuff that's going on around them, and that's when trouble happens. If you're not paying attention to what's going on.
Have there been instances where you found it better to ask for permission beforehand? Have there been places that there was an owner there or someone there, but you really wanted a shot from inside, and you approached somebody and said, "Hey, do you mind if we go into this space?" Or is it always a covert kind of deal?
No, there's places we've gone where we've asked permission, and usually if you ask nicely, and if we just sometimes there's places we've been driving past and we're like, oh, let's stop and ask this guy, and 9 times out of 10 they're like, oh yeah, sure, I guess, fine, yeah. We have greased some palms before. Okay. We've come upon security guards. We're like, here's $20-$40, and they're like, yep, go ahead. It happens. Right. It doesn't hurt to ask. The worst they can say is no. We've had some really surprises where we didn't think we'd ever be able to get in there, and little bit of a Benjamin or two, and in you go. So it just depends.
What about going in at night? Have you done photography at night, or do you find it the best practice to just not go into these places when it's dark?
I like shooting during the day just because you get more details. Shooting at night, you've got your flashlight. You have to light everything up, and that attracts attention. Some people like to do it just to go do it without photography, just to go in and be there. I've done that a couple times, but I would rather go during the day because you can see what you're shooting.
Yeah,
that's just my way of doing it. But just depends on who you ask. But I would rather be there during the day.
Now, what is the percentage? Again, I want you to be as careful as you need to be. What is the percentage of places where the access is easy versus you need to let yourself in, let's say?
I tend not to let myself in. I got to be careful with what I do. I would say most of the places we go are fairly easy to get into.
Okay.
Most of them just have doors that are wide open. Just walk in off the street. Or you walk down an alley and there's a door or a large window that's wide open, and you just find yourself in there. But we don't tend to break in. We don't do B&E.
What about again? This would be as cautious as you need to be. Souvenirs of any kind of variety, items from anywhere that have been left behind, or you come across something that it is worth picking up. Has this ever happened? Do you know what the legality of something like that is, or have you had to turn anything in, a belonging that you've come across, anything like that?
Well, I tend to follow the rule of exploration, which is basically, just, I'm sure you've heard this before, leave nothing but footprints, take nothing but pictures, that kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
Something like that. But yeah, I don't tend to take anything just because, somebody left it there for you to see. It's kind of cool to leave it for someone else to see, when they come in. Right. The only time I've ever taken anything is if I know the building's getting demoed, or if I know it's, close to collapse or something like that. There's been a couple of situations where we've taken some blueprints from some buildings that were really, really, really soaking wet. Brownsville, Pennsylvania. There was an old, it was called Union Station, and the top floor was the board office, basically the headquarters of the Monongahela Railroad. And the building was going quick, and the water was seeping in, and everything was wet. And they had giant cases full of old railroad blueprints. And if someone didn't save a couple of them, they would be gone. So we grabbed a couple of those, dried them out, and saved those. That kind of stuff. If it's going to get ruined and it's going to get destroyed, that's a little different. But if I tend not to go into houses that are that well, where there's that much stuff left. Yeah. I wouldn't take anything in a house.
Has everyone that's gone with you always been on the same page? Have there been instances where you need to tell somebody that you brought, hey, we don't do that, leave that alone? Have there been grabby people that have accompanied you at any point?
No, I'd say most of the people I go out with are on the same wavelength. I don't think I've ever had to tell anybody, hey, knock it off. Or usually the people that I go with, I kind of have vetted ahead of time. I kind of know like where they're at with that stuff before we ever go out. So maybe once it's happened, but it was like, hey, don't do that, and they didn't do it. You know,
Yeah.
they knew somebody new to the situation that didn't know any better. We kind of had to explain it to them, but after that, they got it.
Now you're a teacher also. About what can you tell us what age range of kids you're teaching?
I teach 7th grade, so I got 12 and 13-year-olds. So
Okay,
that
so
perfect time period.
you must be the coolest teacher by far.
I get questions. Well, where did you
I'm
go this
sure.
way? It's almost like Indiana Jones. I get these Indiana Jones questions. Like they think I'm like running around, getting chased by Nazis and stuff. Sometimes I get chased by crackheads, but it's not quite the same thing, But yeah, I get questions.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
How often do they ask to come with you?
All the time. I'm like, nah, you're 12. You're not coming with me.
Yeah. That's so funny.
Take me with you. No.
Have you had parents approach you and say, "Don't talk about this with my kid anymore"? They're trying to go out there.
No, I never have. I've had parents. Oh, I lost you.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can't see you.
Oh, I'm not
lost
sure
your picture. I don't know.
Hold on,
I can hear you, but
I don't know what
you
happened.
that or you lost me. One of the two.
No, I can hear you. Let's see.
Oh, almost.
No.
Oh, wait, there we go.
Oh.
Kind of. Now there's something now. I don't know. Don't know what happened. Something kind of went in front of the.
We'll keep discussing anyway. If they can't see me, it's no big loss. But let me see here.
Parents, you're asking about parents.
Is that what parents? There's been no run-ins. There we go. Am I back?
Yep.
All right. There we go.
I've had parents curious about. They want to know. They ask me questions like, "Oh, that's so cool! I didn't know. I didn't know you could do that." I'm like, "Yeah." I've actually had some parents go and do it on their own, like with advice from like, "Oh, where can we go? What can we? What should we do?" And really? I've had a couple of times that's happened. Yeah. So
wow.
I've never had anybody that's like, "That's horrible what you're doing." I've never had anybody do that yet. I mean, knock on wood.
Great. I'm glad to hear that because you never know. What about the higher ups at the school there? Are they?
I've never had any problems. I think it's kind of like just don't get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, that's great. So, I'm sure if you were getting arrested every other week, that might be a different story.
Well, that'd be different, but I've never been.
Might sway them a different way.
And that's just kind of one of those things where you just have to be. You have to. Your gut tells you, should I go into this place or not? If your gut says no, then you don't.
Yeah.
You think there's a possibility where you're going to run into a problem like that? You're like, no, I'm not doing it.
Do you have a pretty good sense about when not to go? The hair on the back of your neck stood up? Yeah.
Oh yeah. We've had some times where it's like, you know what, this isn't going to happen today.
Do you get?
You just know.
Do you get arguments from the crew ever about saying no? I think it's fine, or they tend to heed your advice and.
No, we're all pretty good on each other. Like if someone has any doubt at all, it's probably just okay. Well, we'll try it again some other time. We got other things we can do. We've got Plan B, Plan C. If anybody in the crew has any doubts, we're like, all right, we're not doing it. It's just safe way to go.
It feels like the kind of thing that it keeps you feeling young too, right? Like not that you're probably close in age to me, and I know like if I was going to go out and do it now, or I pass these places sometimes, and I get that tingle, like I'd like to go in there and check that out. So it's a fun kind of thing that most people aren't doing, but maybe some more people should. Do you have any favorite spots you've been in that have been like a real thrill just to explore? Do you have a favorite?
I've been in a couple power plants. I'm not going to say where they were at, but I've been in some power plants that had partial power still. So they had some lighting, and some of the control stations they were all in the red, but they were all lit up.
Wow.
It was, you want to talk about tents.
Yeah.
That was pretty exciting. I'm trying to think here now. Some of my favorite spots. We just did an abandoned hospital in Chicago not long ago. That was 11-story hospital with surgical theater and all kinds of cool stuff in there, and old labs, and it was neat.
That's very cool.
We talked about Kings Park out in Long Island, that kind of stuff. I love those kind of hospitals, those old Kirkbride hospitals, that kind of stuff. Those are exciting.
Right. Now I'm okay. So yeah, people that watch the show know I'm from Long Island originally. There are some places on Long Island, further out east. I'm thinking of one in particular that is
Camp Hero.
Yeah, that is a big no-no. Has this ever crossed your mind to try to go near or in.
I think you can get close to Camp Hero. There's certain
You can
things
get
you
pretty
can do
close.
there. I don't think there's certain things you can't, but
Yeah,
I never been out that far. I didn't realize. I mean, when you look at Long Island on a map, you don't realize how long it actually is. You're like, that's
it's
4
long.
hours. 4 hours from tip to tip. You're like, geez, that's like the state of Ohio.
Mhm.
So we never been out there yet. Usually when we go out to Long Island, we try to stick close to New York City. But
Okay.
one of these days, I'm going to get out there. I want to see that radar installation out there.
Yeah,
But
there's the red, and you know what? There are there's the lighthouse in Montauk too. There's a
mhm.
lot of stuff in Montauk. Montauk is weird. In fact, I think there's a YouTube channel that's called Montauk is Weird.
Yeah, the
So if you
Montauk
ever,
Project and all that stuff. Yeah. Oh yeah.
all that stuff is out there.
That weird creature they found on the beach years ago. I remember seeing that
Yes,
in
the
the
Montauk Monster. Yeah,
monster. Yep. Yep.
it's beautiful out there, but it is weird. There is definitely stuff that is ripe for exploring and looking into,
There,
and it
there are
kind
just
of
certain places that are like that. They're just weird. That you
it just
just
kind of
what you get there and it's like there's just a vibe.
yeah.
Pleasant
It
West
kind of
Virginia. Like
it encompasses all the stuff we've kind of talked about. There's
yeah.
cryptid stuff there. There's paranormal. There's
Yep.
abandoned. There's whatever you want to call rogue science experiments going on. There's
Mm-hmm.
government projects. There's the Brookhaven Labs. There's a lot of weird stories about the Brookhaven Laboratory out there in conjunction with those other things. I recommend that if you go out that way, you'll find plenty to keep you
Yeah.
busy.
One of these days, we
Yeah.
would love to go out there.
Do you
It's just a
have?
question of time and money, you know?
Oh, sure. Do you have specific dream spots that you have not made it to yet that you really want to get into?
Yes. I mean, I would love to go I would love to go to Europe. I've never been to Europe. I'd love to go to Europe. There's stuff in Europe that's way crazier than anything we have here. I mean, they have stuff from, everything from medieval, to World War II and just all the, the Eastern Bloc, country ruins. It's crazy what's out there. I'd love to go to Germany. I mean, everyone wants to go to Chernobyl. Everybody wants to go to Pripyat in
Yeah.
Ukraine, but I think that's probably not a good place to go right now.
No, maybe never.
Maybe never ever again. I don't know. Who knows what's going on out there? But
Yeah.
here in the States, I'm trying to think. I mean, I just love moving around in New York. Like all the hospitals in New York. There's one that I want to hit called Creedmoor. It's in Queens.
Sure.
And I just haven't gotten a chance to get there. I've been around it. I've been close by, but I've never been able to actually, every time I'm there, I'm with somebody who doesn't want to do it. So,
What's the hesitancy that they have? Is it?
it's just they're just not into exploring. They don't want
Oh,
to risk
okay.
it. I'm there like with more of a tourist and not so much an explorer.
Okay, I see. Now, what about and again, advise caution. What about places that are not necessarily abandoned, but that have certain times of year or certain times of day or week that they're just closed? Has this ever been somewhere that you have gone into or desired to go? Active theme parks, let's say, for an example, or I don't know what else would those categories, but is that something that's completely off the table?
Not really. I don't think I'd go to some place that's not abandoned. That's
Right.
just closed for the season. It's not not abandoned. It's just closed. It's going to open again. It's not like it's one of those places. So I wouldn't say I'd probably do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you're shooting in these places, how long are you taking to stage a photograph? Are these more kind of on the move? You're seeing the shot in your mind's eye, and it's point and click almost, or are you setting up tripods? Are you messing with lighting? Are you doing all that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, when you're in a darker area, tripod, you got to have a tripod. I mean, unless you're gonna set your settings to where you're I don't know how familiar you are with camera settings, but there's the ISO setting, to shoot at a high ISO to get so that you won't get blur. But that makes your whole picture grainy. So that's why you set up your tripods. You can do it without all of that. So tripod in the dark for me is always a must. We've done something called light painting, where you have this pitch black room and you set it for long exposure and you use your flashlight to light up the whole room. And basically, by the time you're done with the long exposure, you've got everything lit up. So you can get light in there. Yeah, it's touch or go. It doesn't always work, but we've done that with some spaces to various degrees.
Have you thought about putting out a book, maybe compiling? And are there legal issues there at all with
There's always the possibility. You kind of have to do some research before you decide what you're going to use, I guess. I have had situations where I've posted something that I thought was fine, and I've gotten messages from the owner saying, "Hey, can you take that down?" And I always do. I don't argue. I'm like, yes, absolutely. I have had a couple of situations earlier on where that happened. You just have to be careful. And with a book, yeah, I think I would research that before I would ever put anything out, because there's all kinds of, you don't want to run into legal situations.
No.
When you put out a book and then all these people start coming to their property, and it just, it's not good.
Right. Yeah, it draws attention to it. But I mean, I would be a guaranteed customer if you did put out a book, though, because I said I love this kind of stuff, and I think
Maybe one of these days. If I'm going to put out, I decided if I want to put out a book, I want to do something different than the dime a dozen. Everybody puts out books. It had to be something different, something, some kind of crazy angle that hasn't been done. I just haven't thought of it yet. Haven't come across the idea yet. So one of these days.
Well, if you do, yeah. Well, we'll keep on top of that. If you ever do, please let me know. We'll
absolutely.
I'd like to get one, and we'll have you back on and talk about it. Do you do anything else with your photographs? Do you make prints ever and hang them up in your house, give them away for gifts, or has that been something you've ever done?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I don't have like a store or anything. One of these days, maybe. I just haven't gotten around to it. Things are so crazy all the time. I mean, this is more of my. I go shooting and do this to kind of stay sane, on the off time, and in the summertime, it's my decompression. But every now and again, I'll print something out for somebody. Somebody asks for something, I've sold one or two here and there, so it's not
great
unheard of. But yeah, I mean, I've been working on my podcast, which doesn't, it's not something that makes money, but it's fun. I do that.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. What is the podcast? Describe the podcast.
It's called Mr. P's Tales from the Road, and it's just crazy stories about stuff that happens when we're out. Throw a little history in there, throw some crazy stories in there. Just depends on the week. Sometimes it's themed, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a half hour, sometimes it's an hour. Just depends on what that week's like. Tell some stories. This is what happened.
I'm sure you have some.
Oh yeah, lots of stories.
Yeah.
Some of them wackier than others, but yeah.
Everybody should check that out too. Is there a point where you envision yourself not doing this anymore? Is it just going to be a matter of I physically can't get out there and do it, or do you have a stopping point where you'll say I'm going to just give this up?
I'm gonna keep doing it until I can.
Great.
I mean, I'm 48. I'm almost half a century old at this point. So I'm keep going until the body's like, hey, no, can't do it anymore. I'll still go out and shoot. But probably not as much of the climbing through things and scaling walls and all that kind of stuff. But just we'll see what happens.
Are you doing other types of photography at this point, or are you just doing the abandoned buildings and such?
I mean, I take my camera everywhere. So if something cool comes up, I just we had our local Day of the Dead festival not long ago. Last weekend. Cool. So we're shooting that. We do a lot of stuff locally in Cleveland. We'll go take our cameras out and just find cool architecture or street scenes or whatever, just whatever comes out and whatever comes around.
Yeah. What do you think?
Whatever strikes you.
What's easier to do? Is it photographing abandoned places or photographing people? Are people these days, being that the internet and streaming and vlogging and all that is so prevalent, do you find that people are more open to being photographed, or when you try, are they still a little? Can they be a little?
Most people are. I think, especially if you're in a public, like if you're at a public celebration, parade or something. Most people are can't wait to have their photo taken. I mean, I've been known to take little, quick little on the sly photos of somebody, just a street shot of them, just in their natural habitat. I've asked people to, hey, you mind if I take your picture? It just depends. You can kind of get a feel, just by being around that person. Are they going to be cool with it or not?
Yeah.
You gotta get a vibe. They want to be left alone. You can kind of get a vibe for that.
You never tried to snap any pictures of the crackheads that are chasing you, though?
No. Usually, because they're after your gear. They want your gear. So they can sell it and get money for it. That's the big concern.
Yeah.
You're running. Hopefully you've got it packed up and you're on your way out of there.
Yeah. Have you lost anything? Have you had to leave anything behind?
No.
At any instance? No. Great.
No. Okay. And again, knock on wood, not yet. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to replace a lens.
No, all that stuff is pricey, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Very expensive hobby. I never knew until I got into this how expensive it was.
Yeah, like I said, when I was doing it, it was just for fun, and it was, I would literally get film cameras from a thrift store and then just put 35mm film in it, and
the disposables. Yep, that's how everybody started off with back in the day.
Yeah, or the cheap. Well, I guess Polaroid was never really cheap, but it's more expensive now since
it's more of a niche thing now. It's all the people that are trying it out.
Yeah, I always loved it. I have boxes and boxes of Polaroids that I've taken over the years, but now it's like almost cost prohibitive to do Polaroid.
Right.
Ever since they pretended to go out of business, and then there was I can't remember the Impossible brand or something. Some other brand started making their film. I don't know if you were aware of this, you remember this, but some years ago, maybe 10 years or so ago, maybe a little more, Polaroid stopped making their film. I guess of what they perceived as lack of demand, and some other company, I think it was called the Impossible Project, they started making it at like exorbitant prices because they were the only ones doing it. And then all of a sudden Polaroid said, wait, we're back. And their price, of course, for the film went up after that. So that's when I stopped. I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
I'm not even shooting with it. I mean, I have an old camera, so it's not, some of these guys have camera. Like, I don't know how you spend the money on all that. That's huge amounts of money to buy a new camera. So.
Yeah. Even for same thing with doing YouTube. Like, I look at cameras, $800, $900. That I'm like, just for doing YouTube, like
the stabilizers and all the stuff that goes with it, the stabilization modules and all that. It's crazy.
Absolutely crazy. Yeah. I mean, maybe one day we'll see if we have success, we'll upgrade. But thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about all this.
Absolutely.
I love your work. It's really good. I hope you'll come back after a bit, and we could talk more about more work you've done and any crazy stories. And I'll link everything, your all your accounts for your photography and your podcast in the description of this podcast.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely.
And thanks again. This was a lot of fun, and it was great talking to you and hearing all this stuff.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Great. All right. Stay safe, and
you too. Have a great week.
You too. All right. And everybody watching the replay, make sure you check out the description, all the links to Mr. P's social media and his Flickr account, etc., where you can see all his beautiful photography of these abandoned places that you'll probably never see the inside of outside of looking at his pictures. So make sure you check it out. Thanks again. And
Thank
good night.
you so much, man. All right. Take care.
All right.
Have a good one.